is you'll recognize the first page as some suggested priorities. I wanted to show you on the second page what additional work the cabinet is doing as you are working. You're working on the goals that match board priorities and looking at strategies, whether or not, given what you know now, we have the right strategies. But we're also working on how we'll know if that strategy is working. What are the metrics? What staffing will it take to do that work? What sort of budget will it take for that? And then notes that we need to remember to discuss with one another. We just put 2 or 3 pages here from one of these to give you an example of what we're working on at the same time you are working. So as you make modifications in the work, we are rushing, trying to just catch my breath. We will go back and make modifications as well. The next document is a summary of the, so far, the work on the priority, the goal statement, and the strategy, just laid out so that you can see what your colleagues have contributed to. This is one easy way to track the discussion today. And then the third thing you'll have is a copy of the PowerPoint. So what we wanted to do is just this introductory section from me, have each of 4 groups present. They each have 7 minutes and no more than 7 minutes to present. And then you have the remainder of the time for discussion and feedback. I wish we weren't constrained as we are by having to socially distance, but this is just the way it is in classrooms right now, because the better way to do this would be to convene board members in small groups and rotate so everybody can talk about everything. But we hope next time to be able to do that. So these are the 5 priorities we suggested for the board's consideration at the end of the last meeting, or under the superintendent's report in the last meeting. The next slide simply shows you the agenda that I just talked about. 30 minutes for us to present, then 35 minutes for the board discussion, and then next steps. After today, in the next 2 weeks, we will work with principal and teacher representatives to get their feedback. And then we'd like to set about a 2-hour board workshop to work on these priorities on February 22nd, if we possibly could, because as you can see, our work for next year needs to be aligned to these priorities. So today we're going to talk about the COVID recovery plan. We're going to talk about academic improvement, talk about community communication and engagement, and talk about talent. Each of those groups has no more than 7 minutes to present, and then the rest of the time is for board discussion. So if we can move on to the next slide, I will turn it over to Carolyn Belcher and start the timer.
So as I discussed with Dr. Frazier, Mr. Von Coates, and Ms. Green, I think one of our biggest challenges in the COVID recovery is our staff, the people that we would rely on to do a lot of this work, are very tired. It's been a long period of time. We've had to be hyper vigilant as educators to keep everyone safe. And as you know, when people are out for either quarantining or illness or other things, a lot of folks in the central office have been deployed. So central office staff are also stretched in those priorities. So, but we, as I hope to share it later tonight with Ms. Roberts, we have some good progress made in terms of academic achievement because we stayed open. So we want to make sure that we can capitalize on that and very quickly close the COVID gaps. So that is the goal here, is to make sure that by the fall of 2023, we close the COVID achievement gap. As you will see when we go through the data this evening, the good news is it's not district-wide, it's very targeted in particular places. So it allows us to be more precise about where we address our resources. And we have a couple of different ideas on the, to propose to the board to discuss. So one is this idea of high dosage tutoring for students who are furthest behind. High dosage tutoring is the idea of intensive day over day relationship with one person, giving when it's done, ideally, it's in an hour within the school day. It's a regular course. It's not seen as remediation or because you're behind, you're just going to math special help. And the idea is you get, they bridge the gap between the concepts. So the way that I understood it is kids can understand algebraic equations, but they can get stuck on some of the things they didn't get fluency on in earlier grade levels, like decimals or fractions. So having a tutor figure out what's actually holding that child back, then they can bridge the gap and build the fluency even as they're still doing algebra. And algebra, as for instance, is a gatekeeper to college and career readiness. So the problem is that every program that you've seen in high dosage tutoring that folks have done, some of them can have as much as a quartile gain in student achievement, but they also are expensive. It can range anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 per pupil to do that. And I don't want to invest that money or have us invest that money if it's not something that we know is going to work and work well. So the challenge, I think, on that is finding, is there an outside provider who can well serve the district and really target one of those areas? Do we want to make sure that we offer a pot of money so that individual schools can customize their own approach in order to meet the needs of their particular kids? So there's a wide range of ways in which we can set that up. Strategy B is straight up more time on task. We know that kids lose learning over the summer. So we want to make sure that we are creating opportunities to extend learning and just more of. Lots of kids were not able to get the same just straight up hours of instruction given virtual instruction and the gaps that we had last spring. So exploring things like an extended day, extended year, Saturday program can be a very viable strategy. I think the challenge with that is structurally, our system is based on the 9-month school calendar. So sometimes the structural challenges can be really real impediments to moving forward. So for example, families are used to having their other children off at that time. How do they adjust their own personal schedules? How do you make sure that school is fun and it doesn't feel like more work and the kids don't feel burdened by coming? And so in thinking about that, it seems less likely that we could get a rigorous program in place for this particular summer, but it'd be a better thing to have schools that are really interested in this idea band together to come up with a strategy so that we can launch it for next year, essentially this coming summer, so the summer of 2022 rather than 2021. And then the last piece is a summer acceleration program. So we have a different approach where we experiment with lots of different strategies to really get kids learning, but also get them excited about school. That could be a nice bridgeway or segue into a year-round program idea. So I think the idea is we might pilot small programs this summer to see if we get any ideas that are really working, but then really think about it, again, having the school come together on what might work over the long term. So those are the 3 different ways that we're thinking about this. And I know that we talked, Dr. Fraser, Mrs. Bond-Coates, and Ms. Green had some reactions, and I don't know if you want to share so that, rather than just me present. Yeah.
We probably better move on because you have 2 minutes left on your next priority.
So then priority 2 is off of what we were just talking about, actually. And that's making sure that we are continuing the investment that we've already made in mental health, trauma-informed instruction, and supports for students to remain healthy, social, and emotionally. So that may mean adding additional staff, given we know the level of trauma is higher right now. So thinking strategically about where that's needed. I think our hope is, as we talked about in the training just now, that the Panorama survey will give us a better sense of how kids and adults are feeling so we can better pinpoint our resources. We want to ensure that every student has access to second step restorative circles or advisory, an adult that really cares about them and that they can connect with at school. So again, expanding some of that. We started the conversation about restorative practice, and I think our hope is to create incentives for schools to want to adapt that as more of a whole scale approach. And then last, continue our work with the MTSS system to make sure that we're proactively providing supports and ensuring that we're monitoring that a little more tightly so that kids are getting what they need to be on track to social emotional health.
So that's just a preview of what we're thinking about in terms of COVID recovery at this point, subject to all kinds of input from the board and from principal and teacher representative groups before we meet again. We're going to move on now to the second big priority area, which is academic improvement. Michelle Simmons and Dr. Joe Williams are going to speak to that. I think Dr. Williams is joining us via Zoom today. Ms. Simmons? I'm not sure who's
He
starting.
is. Maybe can you?
Yeah, I'm here. Great day, everyone. So the next priority, which Michelle Simmons and I, which we'll be covering, is academic improvement. And what we are talking about under academic improvement is we want to increase the scholar performance in English, language arts, and math. And what we mean by that is we want to accelerate the learning of all our scholars, and especially in those schools where we've seen persistently low performance. And what we propose to do that is we want to ensure that we have a guaranteed and viable curriculum in both ELA and math. And what we mean by guaranteed and viable is we want to ensure we have a curriculum that allows access for all scholars to a rigorous process that addresses all of our grade level standards. And in addition, teachers have the time to implement that curriculum, and they also have the professional development needed to support that curriculum. And we know that we're there in math, in the fact that we have bridges at the elementary level, and we have illustrative math at the middle school level. And we also have what we call OGAP, which is an ongoing assessment project, which teaches teachers how to get kids more in the mindset of a conceptual way of thinking as it relates to math versus procedural, which is probably how the majority of us have learned math, if you're my age or a little bit older. But we know we're there with math, and we have some work to do in the ELA area, though. And what we mean by that is we do not feel that we have a guaranteed or viable curriculum, or we do not have a guaranteed or viable curriculum in ELA. And so what we've done to address that is we have a task force that we've created, and we've met twice already to focus on, number one, what our needs are as it relates to ELA. And once we do that, we can identify a curriculum. And what we want to do is make sure that by fall of 2020, in a percentage of our schools, we adopt that new ELA curriculum that's decided upon. Our curriculum and instruction department is leading that effort. And I'm very proud to say that one of the biggest focus areas for that group is the fact that we want to make sure, like I said before, that we're exposing our scholars to that rigorous content, but not watering down what it is that we're presenting to them. All righty. So the next thing we want to focus on, if the board is willing to lead this work, is we would like to focus on what we have researched and found out about the Long Beach Promise. And what that does is it ensures, can you go back? Okay, wait. It ensures that all scholars are college and career ready. And that's what they've done in that district. And what they want to ensure on top of that is that college is an option for all kiddos in the district. So this is something that we're interested in working on. If the board, again, is interested in us doing this work, if you want to lead this effort. Next slide, please. So next, the next priority we want to speak about under academic improvement is our focus on acceleration schools. And when we think about our acceleration schools, we have some schools that we've identified where the scholars in that school need to make up more ground than they typically would in a school year in order for us to accelerate their learning. And in order to do that, we're proposing that we provide some professional learning from leading educators to focus on what we call PLCs. And our PLCs are our professional learning communities. And this is where the magic happens for our kiddos, where our teachers kind of look at their data. They kind of look at the data to decide what they're going to teach, how they're going to teach it. They look at assessments and decide if whether or not what they've taught has worked, if they need to go back and revisit. And so we want to make sure that we have some experts in the field assisting us with that. I kind of like to use the analogy that I have a cousin who works on some HVAC units, and he's pretty good. He's decent, but he's not the best. And sometimes he has to refer us out to someone else that's an expert. And that's okay, because if it's good for kiddos, we know it's the right thing to do. So they are experts in that area. So we want to make sure that we have these schools specifically focusing on that, because it's going to be critical to accelerating the learnings of those scholars in those schools. The next thing, we want to make sure we build capacity of district leadership and select school principals on effective school turnaround. And what we mean by that is we hear that word transformation all the time, but in order to be a transformational leader, you really need a skill set that's keeping you as an instructional leader first and foremost. And we have partnered with UVA, and they're currently working with some of our acceleration schools, not all of them, and 2 schools that wanted to partake in that program. And what they're learning are all the skills that they need to actually be transformational leader in their buildings. They actually focus on what they call 90-day plans, because I believe, and they believe, in order to do something and do something well, you need to do it in small increments. Take on small things and do them in small increments instead of taking on really large projects and tasks, which we know we all kind of get caught up in, and we really don't get the gains that we like to see when we do that. So I'm going to let Michelle Simmons talk about the next 2 strategies under the focus on acceleration schools. So Michelle, if you're ready, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. So the next item, as it relates to acceleration school, really anchors some of our work in terms of having a team whose singular or sole focus is prioritizing acceleration schools. So this is one of Carolyn Belcher's main priorities, ensuring that we have the leadership, we have the programming, the curriculum, instruction, and assessment that really will make our priority schools a focus. And so we have an accelerated schools executive director, Jackie Haynes, if you haven't met her yet, as well as a coach whose primary focus is on supporting principals. So they're inside the buildings, attending PLCs, inside the classrooms, side by side with leaders, examining instruction for the purpose of fortifying teaching and learning. And so one key area that's important to all of us centers around reducing the number of chronically struggling schools. And that may entail partnering with proven providers or entrepreneurial educators within CCSD to operate schools. Embedded in this work as a result of our conversation on Friday, Dr. Williams and I met with Ms. Waters, Ms. Darby, Ms. Coakley. We want to make sure that stakeholders, SICs and PTAs have a hand or a voice in what these partnerships perhaps could look like. Thank you. And finally, under academic improvement, priority 3, increasing kindergarten readiness across the system. A few key strategies centers around that guaranteed and viable curriculum you heard Dr. Williams mention. So we have rolled out and are in the process of rolling out creative curriculum, which is a comprehensive program centered, anchored in literacy, numeracy, some social emotional aspects as well. Alongside creative curriculum is Haggerty, which helps us with that phonics and phonemic awareness that's so important to all of our students, including our ESOL population. Next is creating at least 2 models of early childhood programming like that at Mary Ford. So we will have an opportunity, you'll find out if you haven't already in the building program, that there's an opportunity potentially at Latson in the upper area of North Charleston and potentially at Lambs to recreate what we've done at Mary Ford, which we're really proud of. We started off really strong at Mary Ford, and we believe that this focus on early childhood will pay dividends in terms of our entire program in the long run. And then finally, strategy C, the goal is to professionalize the Head Start faculty so that more and more of those educators have college degrees and teaching certificates to shore up the work that happens with our smallest, our littlest learners. And so we believe that to be about a 5-year effort, but we are positioned and poised to begin that work in the upcoming school year.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons, Dr. Williams, and Ms. Belcher for the academic pieces of what we're thinking just initially for your consideration. I'll turn it over now to Erica Taylor, who's going to cover the communication and engagement.
Thank you, Dr. Postaway. And so I'll just begin by saying we understand the need to communicate with all stakeholders, and we believe that we've been doing a very good job with our messaging infrastructure that we have in place, which is our website, our mobile app, social media, and our messaging system, which are the robocalls. However, we must ensure that all family email addresses and phone numbers are in our system, and we must increase the number of people who routinely use our website, social media, and mobile app. It's critically important, especially as the pandemic continues and makes face-to-face contact more challenging. So our goal 1 is to increase the number of stakeholders who are in direct communication with CCSD. So our strategy A includes increasing the number of CCSD mobile app downloads. Currently, there are 8,500 downloads. We want to increase that to 20,000. Strategy B is to increase the percentage of accurate telephone numbers and email addresses that we have for mass notifications for all of our families. Strategy C is to increase the number of CCSD social media followers, that's Facebook and Twitter. And our goal is to increase by 10%. And currently we have about 26,000 followers. Strategy D is to monitor our analytics regarding readership and reach for all CCSD communication tools. And that simply is to increase our website traffic to our desired links. Strategy E is to increase the number of e-newsletters targeted for stakeholder groups, i.e. all staff, but we've been contacted by other departments who would like for us to help them create e-newsletters as well. And then strategy F, to increase the number of regular communications to our legislative delegation and our constituent boards. We also know that we must have a communication and engagement strategy built into all of our CCSD priority areas in order to be effective. So as I talk about goal 2, our goal is to increase the number of stakeholders who are engaged in dialogue with district and schools and organized sessions within safety conditions. Strategy A is to create a tiered engagement strategy that is coordinated and aligned between the various departments. Strategy B is to build a communication and engagement plan around each and every one of the district's priorities. Strategy C is to increase the number of sessions and participants for each constituent district for parents in the community. Strategy D is to increase the number of teachers and employee sessions, that's in person and virtual, so that we can hear from our teachers and employees. Strategy E is to hold and host superintendent sessions in our communities for parents, both in person and virtual as the opportunity presents itself. And strategy F is to hold Q&A sessions on a regular and more frequent basis, and that's virtual until safe. Now, we need creative ways of engaging families and other stakeholder groups that involve face-to-face and remote sessions. We know that it's time-consuming and labor-intensive, but we need engagement strategies that have dialogue and the opportunity to listen to families and community members, as well as sharing information to improve in understanding and support. So goal 3, we talk about the increased use of technology tools to listen and respond to stakeholder issues and concerns. Strategy A is to utilize online surveys of parents and stakeholders through our CCSD website and app. Strategy B is to conduct ongoing short surveys for feedback for gathering information from teachers and staff and parents as necessary. And strategy C is to use email with specific purposes and social media tools around specific issues.
So that's sort of the, we admit, flyover of 3 of the 4 goal areas or priority areas. And now we'd like to turn it over to Mr. Brigman to talk about talent. Mr. Brigman.
Thank you. So on talent, a couple of quick strategies I want to cover. First of all, we must hire early. And when I say that, especially for teachers and for school-based leadership positions, our certified staff are under contract, as many of you know. So early hiring is very critical for us to start making decisions now for the 2022 school year. A recent review with TNTP, a group we've been working with on teacher recruitment, basically shared with us that 35% of our principals report that they hire early. And we need to hire earlier because teachers are available now looking for positions for next year, as are leaders looking for next year. That's a new, when I say it's not new for us in HR, but it's different sometimes for our principals because we're dealing annually with teacher contracts that are issued by May 1st. And we're also looking at a budget process that occurs in the late spring. So sometimes our principals are a little reluctant to hire early because they're not sure of their needs yet. Rewarding talent. We all know the cost of living in Charleston, the cost of housing is a barrier sometimes to attract talent to Charleston County, especially our young new teachers who are not always the top paid positions in our district. So we're continuing to look at salary structures, and the board gave us a directive in the fall that our current salary structure should be within 98% of market. Diversity is another key lever. We are looking and continue to look at our grow our own type programs. I mentioned in this, and you can barely see this probably, but a broken pipeline, again, a study from TNTP, really addressing the fact that our traditional teacher ed programs are not addressing our needs in our school district for a more diverse teaching population. So our traditional ed programs, we cannot be dependent on traditional ed programs for a more diverse teaching staff. So I'm going to mention a little bit about some of our grow our own strategies here. The next slide. So some of what Charleston County School District already has in place that will help us address a more diverse teaching population. I know that's not me.
No, it's not.
I know I talk a lot, but okay. We have several strategies that are already in place, and we're working with Don Kennedy's group with a cultural competency team to really dig a little deeper into some of these strategies. But one I'm quite proud of, and the district should be proud of, is Teach Charleston. You've heard me talk about this initiative before, I believe. It's one of only two district-sponsored teacher alternative certification programs. And alternative certification programs allow us to have a more diverse teaching group coming through a cohort. We're wanting to continue to expand that initiative. We're going to ask for resources for that expansion for 2022. Part of that is also a adjunct residency program specifically geared to recruit more African-American males or teachers of color at the elementary level. Now, one piece of that will include additional permission from the State Department of Ed to add elementary certification to the alternative route pathway. Our Teach Local program is already in place at Early College High School. And basically our high school students that are part of Teach Local are able to graduate with an associate's degree and transition right into the College of Charleston into a teacher ed program and eventually become teachers in Charleston County School District. We offer them an open contract upon graduation. And continuing to work with our Call Me Mister program, we are looking at scholarship programs for SC State and the College of Charleston. And another initiative that we've looked at in the past, but haven't always had the resources, was geared towards our support staff, our teacher assistants, a pipeline for our teacher assistants to become teachers. So we're continuing to explore that. The next slide. On compensation, many of you who've been on the board for a few years know that the board had, in the 18-19 school year, we were going towards a 3-year phase-in for a teacher salary structure with a starting salary for teachers of $40,000 a year. That $40,000, we talk about first-year teachers, but it's definitely impacted every cell on the schedule, if you might add. That was delayed slightly this year. We'd already completed year 1 and 2. This year we were asked to freeze the teacher salary structure. So my team in compensation, we are reevaluating that as to what we need to recommend for 2022 to recapture that 40,000 plus any COLAs or anything that was lost, because we need to have a competitive salary structure to continue to recruit teachers to our district. And also as part of that, we will bring forward a salary structure across the board based on the board's directive for 98% of market. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bigman, for that summary. Ms. Taylor, I hope I said thank you to you too. I was just trying to save every moment that I could. So we're at the part now where we wanted to leave time for board discussion. We know that in groups of 2 or 3, board members have given feedback. Before we meet with principals and teachers to sort of get their input regarding what different priorities or what changes in these priorities they would want to see, we wanted to make sure that we have enough comfort with the board before we do something like that, and then come back to the board for a much longer workshop. So this is sort of iterative. We didn't want to get out in front of the board involving principals and teachers. So this is the only workshop time we could work out for today. So the floor is yours. The first question I think we would ask you to consider is whether you think we have missed any huge strategy. This is an awful lot for us to take on. It's quite a bit given the recovery from COVID, it's a lot to take on, but we think it's all really important. So do you think we've missed anything would be the first question.
Now, let me just begin and then we'll have some sense
Yes,
of
sir,
order
please.
so we can swiftly move to this. First, let me just thank the board members for participating in a small session and staff for bringing together this presentation to us today. So I'm actually going to go around and allow board members to, if they have questions, and what we will do is, just for the sake of time, to make sure that we capture everyone, we're going to allow each board member to ask 2 questions. Please don't do a comment, then a question, then a comment, and then another question. Okay, 2 questions so that we can get answers, and then we can move swiftly. We'll come back around if need be. So we'll begin with Dr. Frazier.
I just have one question.
Okay.
Are we now using outside agencies, outside agencies to bring in teacher talent to the district?
So we do use for alternative route, whether it's international teachers or alternative route, a few. So if you're specifically asking, I mean, we do have international teachers. We do have an outsourcing also for special ed. Special ed has been a really difficult content area to recruit. So yes, ma'am, we do some.
I guess I'm talking about some teacher told me that she was sent to the district from a hiring agency within the area.
I probably need a little more details.
Okay,
Maybe it's
I'll
special ed
listen.
related.
Okay.
We definitely have used some special ed agencies that have provided special ed teachers.
Okay, thank you.
Not many, but a few.
Okay, Ms. Coates.
So given that we don't have a lot of time, what I want to see in our next round is, I don't think you've missed anything. And I think we've had this discussion. COVID is a recovery process. And then I see you pulled out some other achievement things. I don't know that they're separated. Certainly in terms of, you're going to be targeting the same children on August 18th. That's going to need to be coordinated, because the ones who need to increase achievement tend to be the ones who are going to have the highest COVID gap. So and then that does bring me to a point of, y'all haven't clearly defined your target audiences. So maybe you need to tell us who is having this, who are we targeting as the COVID gap? I mean, because right now that sounds like 50,000 kids. And then it sounds like of those 50,000, 25,000 already were below achievement that we've got to focus on. So we're kind of swatting flies here, trying to figure out how you think you're talking about the same or different people. Just kind of help us through that. The second thing, because we don't have a lot of time and there'll be a lot more questions before I can approve any of these, is go back to your 1820 goals. And if that's in your 1820 goals, then I'm not saying recycle it, but if it was a worthy goal not accomplished, then why is it not a worthy goal? Specifically, and not to beat up on HR, which I've done for 10 years, but goal number 4, sorry, Bill, goal number 4, attract, develop, retain, and reward talented teachers, principals, and staff for every school and division in the organization, a competitive salary structure, a recruitment and training and cultivation plan for top leaders, and at least 5 schools piloting a testing curriculum leader and plan manager school. You're almost saying the exact same thing. So let's put some synergy into those 2 things. If they're you don't have time to answer. If they're the same thing, next time around, let's say they're the same thing, or why are they different? You need more money than you needed for this, kind of, et cetera. But they're sounding very similar. And that sort of goes to a couple of the other things, as I would overall say.
Let's go.
I'm trying. There are no questions because they don't have time to answer. I'm telling them to get these questions ready. If he spends 2 minutes answering, I'm done.
But ask the question.
So I'm asking him to bring that to the next table. And the same with the number 1, which was maximizing the learning opportunities. I want to see how y'all blend what used to be the first goal into what your new things are. but I think you're close. It's almost as if you're paralleling some things that could be, we don't need any new monies. We already put new monies into it and we need to keep doing it. Or we did this, show me how you did this, and you still need new monies to do that. That would be my basic.
I think the only thing I would say in response is that some of the work that we started from the mission critical work is not done, and probably this is the next phase. So the good news, specifically aligning curriculum, instruction, and a regular assessment system, and then having wraparound supports. So the good news is when we go over the student achievement results that we've got tonight, which is again, just one test for each group of students, we're seeing some wins in mathematics, which I think reflects the investment that this board and the district made in mathematic curriculum, real professional development, and then other extension things like Zern in this time of COVID. So we have less gaps. We actually don't have it at the district-wide level, a significant COVID gap in mathematics. Now, anything that we talk about a system for 45,000 kids, there's lots of gaps in individual schools within individual grade levels. So in many ways, the COVID strategy is to meet those gaps. And then we should stay the course in some other interventions because our English language arts is not as strong. And we do have more gaps. And that's clearly a place where we need to invest in terms of curriculum, professional development, and real meaningful support. So we have to both like up our game and our core, even as we're targeting the places where kids have fallen behind.
And shout out to Dr. Williams and you. You're the only two people who actually referenced something we did approve and pay for, and you're still doing it, and you're doing something different. I saw that math in there, and then we're moving to ELA. That's exactly how it should work. We did the math, it's working, we're staying the course, we're adding to it. We need to take on the next challenge. So not to outshow your peers, but.
Thank you. Ms. Hedrick?
My question is just around the COVID recovery plan and just making sure that there's an alignment with the academic improvement goals, particularly if we're going to be implementing new ELA curriculum in the middle of the recovery.
Right.
Just making sure that those two things align. So it's not really, I guess it's a question to.
When we think about overall achievement, so we have individual goals for every child to be grade level ready, system-wide. So that's overall. And then when we see gaps and deficiencies or students struggling with numeracy and literacy skills, that's another subgroup that we will target as well. And so like I think it was Ms. Boncourt who said, where are the differences or how do we discern overall achievement versus the COVID gap? And for the most part, we want all students to be on grade level. Some just have a farther way to go than others. And so it's all embedded, but when you see the data presentation from Ms. Belcher and Ms. Robertson, a few moments, you get a better sense.
Okay, Ms. Green?
This is back on the academic improvement, and I think Dr. Williamson did this slide, but it's the strategy C. It says, if the board is interested in leading this effort, exactly what does that mean?
Do you want me to
Dr.
take?
Williams, can you unmute or I can speak to it if you like?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me, Ms. Green?
I certainly can, Dr. Williams.
So what we wanted to do is like I said, we've looked into this, and that's why we put a link in for you all to kind of view what the Long Beach Promise entails. And anything that we do, we want to make sure that we have your blessing, we have your approval. So we feel it's a good effort. So we'd like to do it, but we want to know if you'd like to lead the effort. And what we meant by that is going to have to take it's going to take direction from you all as specifically what are the things that you think we should be focusing on to ensure, or you think we should be focused on to ensure our kids are college and career ready when they leave the system. Some of the things that they did were like, they started at grade level 4 with exposing kids to what college means, what it looks like. They provide this intensive support for families as they kind of matriculate through the system as it relates to filling out financial aid forms, taking kids on college visits and college campuses. So a lot of that stuff, of course, requires additional funding. So out of all the things that they've done, we could put together something for you all and let you look at it and see, okay, we feel this is important as it relates to making sure our kids are college and career ready versus this. So because there's going to be some financial pieces that go along with it. So that's what we mean by if you would like to lead the effort, ma'am, if that makes sense to you.
Yes, that does make sense. Thank you very much.
Dr. Postwick?
If I could just add to that quickly, in the Long Beach plan, every child has the 2 or 4 year college paid for. So it would mean that our board would need to work closely with the higher ed boards in our area and the private sector to make sure that if kids starting in 4th grade, if we can get them on grade level in 4th grade, that there are the supports all along the way, and that both within Charleston County and across the state, public institutions of higher learning are willing to partner with our board and private entities for scholarships. So that's beyond anything the staff could do, and that's the kind of work we would see the board taking on, a different sort of role than this board has taken on.
Okay, Dr. French? I'm sorry.
Just one question.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. Brigman, you know I was gonna pick on you, right? It's all out of love, Bill. So how would you describe the recruitment process that we have? Would you say it is good, aggressive, explosive? And if it's not where you'd like for it to be, what would it take to get you there?
So explosive is a great word there.
It's a great word.
So I look at it in 2 different ways. So as far as we have an amazing recruitment team. I would be honest, it's probably some of the best recruiters that have ever worked with me, and I've been in the department for a long time now. They're very aggressive when they find candidates. My conversation with them is this is a sales job in lots of ways, and you have a district to sell to the candidates that you meet and the opportunities we have. So they really manage candidates, so to speak, manage opportunities and market those candidates to principals. Our challenge that we're facing, like all districts, is around the diversity piece. I'm continue to be frustrated that we're not seeing out of our traditional ed programs more diverse teachers coming through. We're struggling, of course, with content area, regardless of ethnicity or gender as well. And so I think Charleston County School District, like many districts across the nation, we're really we're being put in a position to really grow our own teachers. So that's been going on for some time. We've been planning for that. We've known that that's what we're facing. So that's so the recruitment team's amazing. And again, they're very, I'll use the word aggressive. They really market candidates. And I think most principals would tell you that's the case. That's my expectation, that we don't let any candidate slip through the cracks. I mentioned the early hiring piece. So for example, last February, prior to COVID, so to speak, because we were kind of approaching COVID, we had almost 600 candidates come to a Saturday event at Trident Tech. And I believe we offered about 80 contracts at that event. I would like to, we certainly could have offered probably 300 contracts at that event, but what we're working with principals is principals not knowing what their needs are at that point. So they're sometimes reluctant to hire, and then the budget process as well. So I'm not sure I've answered your question, Mrs. Green, but I'm very proud of the recruitment team. They do an amazing job.
Thank you.
Dr. French?
Thanks. I had one question I had is about communication, and I'll just say I'm a little frustrated because it looks like the outline that you gave us last week, even though we all met with you in small groups, nothing has changed, even though we provided feedback. And I know that in our group, we did provide feedback that I felt like could have affected what was presented today. One thing I want to say about communication and engagement is I think we really need to have a high priority on engaging the people who we are not engaged with right now. It is not about who else we can get on social media. Even if you have a lot of followers on social media, that doesn't mean they read anything you put there. We need to get in touch with the families of students who are struggling. And we have got to use a lot of different methods to do that. And a lot of them are going to be personal and face-to-face community building. And that's really key and important. And I think that has to be a huge part of our strategy. And I'm not seeing that in this outline. So I think we need to there are things we can do right now. We have school improvement councils that we haven't been utilizing as well as we normally do because of COVID, but there are ways to get them to help us. Let's do it. I hope we can provide help with that. I hope you'll let us know what you need. And then the second thing that I wanted to emphasize is on the COVID-19 recovery, where we talk about social and emotional issues and trauma. I think that this needs to be a primary focus so that kids come back a little bit better ready to learn in the fall, because all of this trauma is impacting their ability to learn now and will continue to. And if there are ways that we can help you implement this over summer programs, leverage any the grants that we have or any of the resources that we have to make that happen, work with community-based programs like the city of North Charleston has a lot of a lot of summer camps. So they know they already have the facility they need to have students there. Why don't we work with them to see what they need? And just my main, I know we're going to be ramping up the restorative practices training, which is fantastic, and that might be another way to engage people at that level. I'm not trying to tell you exactly what to do. I just want to say there's some ideas. If we can have more conversation, I think that we'll realize that we can network a lot of resources together. And I just, as a board member, I really want to hear what you need from us to make those kind of things happen.
Thank you, Dr. French. Ms. Waters?
Sure. The one thing that, and I see it referenced a lot in here, but the one thing I don't know explicitly looking at this is how the cultural competency piece intersects with the rest of the work. Since it's, and I hear like mention of, recruiting more teachers of color, social and emotional support, et cetera, but I just want to know how it really wraps around and what the plan is for it to look like, and make sure that it actually lands at people having a greater awareness of self when they're delivering instruction to students or services, throughout the district.
I think our intent is to build it in so that each of the goals has that as a piece of it. So for example, the academic achievement, any curricular choice that we make for ELA would have to reflect the diversity of the community that we serve in terms of literature choices. I think it's an expectation that new teachers would get trained in cultural competency, and then maximizing the opportunity of the federal grant, that we get smarter as a system building on our local assets around cultural competency. Because what I think is so great about the grant that Mr. Kennedy and others in this district wrote is that it's about better setting goals of what you want to accomplish as a school in that area, and then seeking out local resources and people who have real expertise to help build that so that you can do better by kids.
And if I can comment as well, we're partnering with the cultural competency team in HR. So back in the fall, I took forward the grow our own strategies I shared to the competency team and discussed those strategies. And really we actually all attended a conference in December, many of the CCT members and HR, looking at best practices across the nation and looking at what we are proposing as well. So I feel like that partnership is really important for HR with the CCT team.
Awesome. Is there a chief diversity officer? There is in the district, right? What? Is there a chief diversity officer or someone over DEI in the district?
So there's a position in this year's budget for such a position. It's funding for it. We interviewed Monday of last week for that position. So there's a follow-up interview coming up in about 3 weeks with one of the candidates. I would say that in terms of how does cultural competency fits into the overall strategies here. As you know, we have a cultural competency team that is working through that. This is something that's new for the district, and so we've been feeling our way through it. There are some challenges out in the schools and throughout the district in terms of how to, for instance, how to communicate around race. And so we have a team about 12 or 14 people. We've expanded that to another group, collaboration group, to better understand. So let me give you one example about the challenges. I mean, you know, Ms. Copeland, she talked about, you know, what she observed here today. The team, the cultural competency team, has been working together for a year, a little over a year, and we meet regularly every Friday morning. And about 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, right after actually 3 weeks ago, after the incident, the insurrection at the state capitol. So we had a conversation, and it was strictly about race. And so we have, you know, African Americans, whites on the team, Latino, and the conversation did not go well. And we had been working together and had built relationships for a year, a little over a year. And when we got into really the hard conversation, difficult conversations about race, and then we didn't have the tools within our group to be able to figure that out. So part of this work is trying to figure out how do we get the right tools within the district so they would have the right conversations and be able to move things forward. So we do not have that framework in place yet, but we're working hard to get that. And then once we get the position hired, I feel confident that we'll make additional progress.
Thank you. I appreciate that introspection, and I'm happy that there's somebody that's going to be doing that work as a focus.
Yes, that conversation can be tough at times, but it's something that must be discussed. Ms. Darby?
Yeah, I would say, Dr. Postway, I don't see that there's anything missing. I think in watching the national news over the last few days, I'm extremely proud that our district is one of the few of its size that has been back in person. And so I think I want to make sure we're not biting off more than we can chew. All of these things are very important, knowing that we're going to have to continue to do all of this in the COVID environment. I think the work y'all are putting into it is good. But one of the most important things for me is priority 2, strategy B is the new ELA curriculum. We talked about that in our small group. And COVID or no COVID, that's something I want to really see us do. So I think as much as we can make sure we're not duplicating and you need to tell us, as I think Dr. French said, what you need from the board, from a financial or support or whatever standpoint you may be able to make these things happen. Because it's not going to happen overnight. So just please let us know. I think it looks good. Thank you.
So yes, thank you, staff, for preparing this document. And this is the first step to getting us to where we need to be. Still deeper diving discussion, no question, but I would like to see, and I don't know, Mr. Brigman, you talked about the recruitment process, but I'd like to see a more robust approach toward recruiting minorities, because that's been a conversation that we have been kicking the can down the road about, in how do we improve that. We just need to take a higher step or higher approach, however that may be, or partnership in making sure that we do reach trying to increase those numbers. I believe that we do have about 3,600 teachers on staff. Maybe out of that 3,600, we're probably looking at about 500 as Afro-American, roundabout. So you can see the numbers are not close to the measure of the students that we have in the population. When we look at our 50,000 students, the number of students we have of the different ethnicity, you will see that, you know, it does not match our teachers that's inside the classroom. So we have to look at how do we change that pyramid so that we can make sure that we are reaching that. So I do want to see a more robust plan on how we're going to approach that to some degree. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Well, I certainly can comment. I really stand behind this idea of growing our own. I'm not seeing that there's going to be much opportunity coming out of traditional college ed programs. There definitely are opportunities to recruit other teachers of color that are already experienced, but I think the pipeline is part of the problem. So part of my ask for the board would be to invest in those grow our own programs.
Okay, well, you have my support on that, if I can see a plan of that nature. My other piece is that, and I was a part of the communication piece. I think that's, I thought the conversation went well. I thought we had some great conversation on how we look around the communication piece and what areas we can improve, and making sure that we're reaching the masses. So that is going, for me, I should say, is a top priority. I believe if we can find the right tool and the measure of pushing and getting the communication out quicker, real time. I like real time information going out, particularly with the COVID situation that we're in right now and the adjustments that we had to make. We need real time information being disseminated to our parents, to our teachers, to our staff as well. And I think we came up with a very pathway of achieving that and maximizing that. And as we get closer to budget time, we'll talk more about that as we define how we do that. But I believe the conversation went well. I may even go a little step further and even talk about that a little bit, and to say in our conversation, we talked about, what is it going to take to get us to where we need to be, in making sure that we are disseminating those information in real time, coming from the district staff down to the schools, so that parents can and the community can find that information quick. Not at the end of the week, but if it's on a Friday, they can go to the school's website and be able to find that information real time that may have went out on a Friday afternoon. And how does that happen? And that means that we'll have to have school-based individuals that's committed to doing that work and helping to update that information on a real-time basis.
Like you asked me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, remember this. So as we, and I'm looking at the time because we do have till 3:15. So those are some of the areas, and I'll get more into that. So I'll yield to, as I said, to other board members to that. But I will finish that up to say that there are areas in growing that, and I hope that we'll be able to push those recommendations out as soon as possible. Thank you for reminding me, Ms. Coates. I will remind you later as well.
No, I'm sure.
But again, thank you, board members, and again, thank you, staff, for putting this work together. We will, I believe the superintendent has given us a pathway of a next discussion on the 22nd, I believe.
Yes, sir.
And I believe it's important for us to look back at this information, particularly those of you that participated in the various groups. If you have additional questions, if we can, go ahead and send it so that some of these questions can be answered prior to our next workshop. And that way we can have a more better understanding of some of the other conversations that are being held in the various groups, so we can better be able to address those questions, concerns as well.
So just
Dr.
about
French.
no, thank you. About the timing of the workshop, I was going to respectfully request that we don't do it on the 22nd, and then we find a time that is not at school pickup time, because one of our board members has to pick up their student. And so if we could do it on another day in the morning, that might be,
Or later in the evening.
something like that. Because I would like everybody to be able to participate, and I think that would be nice. And if we need a longer workshop, I'm certainly open to that. I'm just saying.
What did you say? I'm sorry, about a board member having to do what now?
One of our board members has to pick up a student from school. So having meetings at this time of day is difficult for that board member. And so that's why I'm asking, we could try to find a different time, preferably a different day, since people wouldn't want to come in the morning and then come back later in the afternoon.
Okay, we will definitely reach out to that board member just to find a possible solution or workarounds, but we do want to accommodate our board members, want to make sure that everyone is participating as well. So just 1 second, I'm still speaking. So making sure that everyone is participating in this, so we will take that into consideration. Dr. Frazier.
Yeah, I'd like to have additional information on the focus on acceleration schools. Strategy D.
Mm-hmm.
Not at this time, but if we could get some more information on that. Mr. Williams, are you still with us? I think. Well, anyway, strategy D,
Yeah, we,
how are we going to?
if you don't mind, we, in the small group where we met about that, we talked about needing to have more information for both board members and the public, because I think people think about acceleration schools in a certain box, and that isn't necessarily what we are looking, or we were talking about. So I think some of the things, Dr. Williams and Michelle could talk to you about, can I think help us with that.
Yes, Reverend Mack and I think Ms. Bond Coach participated in the committee that vetted partnerships right before our COVID, and can speak to the process in detail. But our idea would be, before we move further with any inquiry or approach, investigation about partnerships, the board would be involved for sure.
Okay, Ms. Coates.
So just to be very, very clear on what's happening from the district side, when or if we get out of this next meeting with some agreement on priorities, have you just encumbered the first 30–40% of our budget in increases you're going to ask for next year? How does this tie? Because we're not talking budget. You guys are talking things that are going to cost money. You don't do them aligned or align us, and we get to the point where we say we don't want to do something, and you say, well, then you promised the public we would do this initiative, but we can't if you don't give us money. That's not going to go well. We need to make sure that's lined up so we understand the accountability of what we're saying when we say move forward with this or don't move forward with that, in terms of what you think that means to increasing the budget expenses over last year. It really wasn't a question. It just, unless you guys are coming, are you guys thinking that this is going to encumber the budget?
No, ma'am, it's to plan the budget and then to bring the budget to the board.
So when we say yes to these things, you use this to plan the budget. We just need to be aware of that.
Right, this is the work that in a normal year we would, I think according to policy, do like in July, August, September, and then we would run the year based on that and build the goals, the budget for the following year based on that. We're just behind this year. So
if we say yes to some of these things, there might be other things you wanted in the budget. Be aware that we need to be cognizant of that as we're moving forward. All these yeses start to build your budget.
Well, they build a budget proposal, but it's not over till the budget's approved. I mean, we can't ask the board to prioritize. It's like planning a house. There are certain things you want in your house.
Absolutely. I just want to make sure that
you plan for it, and then you make trade-offs when you look at the budget. So no, this is not a commitment to do it. This is a commitment to prioritize our wish list.
Thank you.
Well, in conclusion,
thank you.
I think it's important to also add that to know staff to be aware of what board members are thinking. And if it includes a budgetary item or a line item, then that is something that needs to be told and said now. So if that is the case, as these things come back to us, then it is staff responsibility to say to us, okay, this is going to require a line item to support this initiative. And we, at that point in time, will determine if that is something we deem necessary at a given point in time. So I think it is important that you know this ahead of time and we not be surprised later on, and you know where we stand. Okay, this concludes our portion of the workshop for today. Thank you so much as we prepare for our next meeting.